Yeah, so continuing with this and in an attempt to offer some practical examples or practical exercises, practical alarm clocks to help us remember ourselves more and de-identify more, remember ourselves more. I guess in a nutshell, we identify with thoughts. Yeah, we identify with thoughts. That's a natural state. Every thought that comes along, and the side effect is that we believe the thought is me, and we believe the thought is true. So then it's like totally unstable, because these thoughts are like the weather. The thoughts are like stimulus response connected to conditions and all of that. So it's totally, they can't have any peace if we identify with any thought that comes along. And so it's some other aspect of the level of the emotions. We identify with our emotions. The totality of the presence now is sucked into one emotion, and now I am angry. Anger is all that I am. I am sad, or I am also, another type of identification is that there is an emotion that comes up, and then there's another part of us that is like afraid of feeling that emotion. Yeah, there's an emotion, and there's another part is like, no, don't go there. It's another I. So now we are identified with our fear of feeling our emotions. So we identify with our repression of the emotion. Yeah. So, or we identify with the emotion itself.
Another way to say it perhaps is we have an emotion, and then we consider the emotion. And this is that second level of identification. We're considering about our own emotions. And so we aren't honest about how we're feeling. It doesn't mean we have to be now blatantly negative with people. Because I feel angry with someone, I don't have to then express my anger. First of all, I have to acknowledge to myself there's anger. What we call anger, and it's interesting to take away that word. And now when you take away that word, you have left in the body an energy. In the chest, perhaps, in the abdomen, there's an energy. What is that? That's what's interesting. And we very quickly call it angry, and then we attach I to it. I am angry. Mm-hmm. But to acknowledge to ourselves there's something going on here that's causing this reaction in myself. I don't have to now blurt out, I hate you, you're an idiot, etc. But to know it this is real self-knowledge, knowing this about ourselves, seeing this, recognizing it, not identifying. And this is where, again, we'll get into this later, but this is where the idea of not expressing negative emotions comes in the simplest way. If somebody pulls in front of me in the car and it creates an instinctive reaction in me, yes? And then there's this feeling I would call anger or irritation. It doesn't mean I have to sit on the horn or yell at them or anything like that. I can simply see that in myself. And actually, by not expressing it in that moment, it will become more visible internally. Mm-hmm. I'll be able to see internally what's really going on. Where did that come from? Mm-hmm. This is self-remembering, bringing self-remembering to a moment where we normally would automatically become identified. Yeah. And then become more identified with being identified. Yeah. And now it spins on itself. It gets more frenzied and we become more negative. And we're just adding layer, and we lose sight of where it started and what that was in us. And with the realization it wasn't consciousness. Yeah. It was a function in us that was reacting. And then it became I because we identified with it. Yeah, so it's interesting if we break it down and slow it down, driving on a highway, listening to Frank Sinatra or to Metallica, whatever, and then somebody comes in. Right away, there is in the instinctive center, there's fear, actually. There is instinctive fear, which is designed for me to be more alert, to take the right move, not to die. Yeah, this fear, adrenaline now.
Now that is all mist. And then the false personality now with the embroidery is like puffed up with the energy of fear. It becomes, do this to me. How can you do this to me? These assholes, they're all stupid to me. And I'm angry. But you see already various steps of being unaware of various chemical eruptions in my body and various things that with which I identified, and now identity is me being wrong, then everybody is stupid and I am right and a victim or something. So what Peter is talking about, you can't do this unless we are practicing when it's calm, yeah, to practice ongoing, to train oneself to be, as they call in the Philokalia, in the all these desert fathers, to be watchful, to guard this inner watchfulness, inner higher level of overall witnessing what's happening, being in the moment, being aware. This way we are more sensitive of every little thing that happens, yeah? So then reverse engineering, this person comes in, yeah, the instinctive center, the eyes, the seeing, sees this thing, energy in the body, adrenaline, right away, there's a tendency to be like, fuck, okay. And okay, the gates are stopped, and now awareness is aware of this energy. And without trying to repress it, I'm just now more aware of the totality of now. So this energy of adrenaline and fear that would have become rage and just like blowing it, now it feeds self-awareness, yeah? So now I'm in a higher state and I have more juice, like real juice.
And because what you're doing in that moment with self-remembering, you are unwrapping the sense of I from that energy. And now you just have the energy. And that energy can be transformed as absorbed by consciousness in such a way that consciousness becomes more conscious. It's eating the, it's not eating, it is absorbing the energy. It took the shell, the I, and threw it away. And now it's eating the nut of the energy started the anger. And an example, this is such a good example about driving and then someone cutting you off. Another thing that happens is in sleep, as a feeling of I, we presume everybody else as I is conscious. And so we presume that the person who cut us off was conscious. And what a jerk they are for doing that. Yes. But in fact, if you looked at it from the point of view, they're not conscious. There was no consciousness there. They were completely identified. They're in a hurry. Maybe it's an emergency. We don't know. Or maybe they're just irritated. They're identified. They're frustrated. They're late to work, or they don't like the traffic. They're zooming in and out. But if we can see that, wait a minute, who's taking who personally in this situation? The I in me, presuming the I in the other person is real, is taking offense and now feels angry. All that whole puzzle can be completely disassembled into nothing, into simply adrenaline surged in us because we were in danger for a moment. But then, as you say, with the embroider, it becomes all this other stuff. And that doesn't have to happen. But here's another thing that does happen. When the adrenaline surges and the identification begins in us, it leaves a residue. It doesn't just dissipate immediately if we remember ourselves. That energy is still in the body.
Yeah, it's run its course.
Yes, it's still there, and you still feel all the things associated with it as sensations, heartbeat, blood pressure, pulse, whatever. And so we also have to allow for that to calm itself down. Now, if we are just identified for a few seconds, it only takes a few seconds for that residue to clear out, let's say, of the centers, because it's still in the centers where it happened. The longer we are identified with something, or the more intensely we are identified with something, the longer it takes for the residue to clear out, to normalize, to purify. This is the idea of purification in esoteric Christianity and esotericism, Eastern teaching is all. The idea of purification is to
Mhm.
bring to have the residue of identification cleared out. So now the centers are normalized again, neutralized, and they serve as a more clean environment in which consciousness can just pass through them. Because that's what's happening as human beings. Consciousness is passing through us. And I've said before, we're passing through consciousness. Both are actually true. But the point being that there doesn't have to be this this network, this overly dense filter through
Mhm.
which consciousness has to pass when we experience the world through the form of a human being. It can be become more like a pane of glass. And this is, I think, as Eastern tradition analogies come into play here, to become a clear pane of glass. The instinctive center, moving center, intellectual center, emotional center, still doing their jobs, still being what they are, but now consciousness can see through them at all times and pass through them and not become them, not attach. You know, the fourth way uses this term identification. The Eastern teachings for millennia use the word attachment. And so consciousness attaching itself to things, and then identification meaning to imply it attaches itself and then it becomes a sense of identity in that thing to which it has attached itself.
Yeah.
But when we try not, what I began by saying was when we try not to identify, we can expect there will be residue from it. And it can be quite unpleasant to bear. The adrenaline is still flowing and so on, but to let it just be there, be aware of it, and let it be itself, because it's adrenaline. It has this charge of energy. You know, that's just this one example. There are so many others, but I'll stop there.
Yeah. So from that example with the car, it's like instead of I am angry, I am afraid, I as a contracted me, it starts to be like there's enough awareing that this energy of fear is felt and seen. Maybe energy a little bit of going into fuck you, but it stops. It's going there, but it's been stopped. And now that energy is being seen. So it's, as you said, there's no me in the fear, no me in the anger. All of these are appearing in the real me as this awareing field.
And it doesn't mean that we should expect for there to be no fuck you. You know? No, that's
Yes.
fine that you feel that and that I starts to form itself. But what happens is as soon as it comes out of our mouth, we have given it complete legitimacy as a sense of identity, as a sense of I. I am right. I get to blame you. I get to accuse you. I get to berate you and deride you. Now we're getting into the play of identities, egos, and this is where we've gone even more asleep. But it's fine to see this I, this accusatory I, come up in us as a feeling. And because that's what happens, it started as adrenaline in the instinctive center. Now it's become an emotional feeling. How could you? Why would you? Don't you know who I am? Something. And fine for this is the value of not expressing these things if done in the right way. But still seeing it happening inside and seeing how all this happens. It's when you really look at it closely, it's fascinating what happens in what is called our psychological world and how energy can become psychology, can become identity. It's amazing. It's an incredible design when you really see it. And it's also interesting that almost all of it is artificial. And we can live a life without all that. And it doesn't mean we disappear. It just means we don't take it personally. It's not about me. Even ironically, my life is not about me. But we're loath to let go of the feeling of I. We're afraid. There's something in us afraid to let go of that because we believe it.
I think two quotes come to mind before we go into some practical exercises. Oh yeah, there was this story that I don't know where I heard it, but we are naturally non-identifying. Our consciousness is naturally, even in the second state, average Joe and Jane, consciousness is not identified with sounds and with sights, usually. Meaning that sounds come, I hear, sounds are coming, but I know that the sound is not me. I'm aware of the sound. Yeah. And then there's this, I'm seeing like sights now. Yeah. Sights, which is actually, we know to interpret it on the retina in the brain, something arises, some photon that's perceived that becomes a sight. And we know that is not me. I'm aware of it. Yeah. So there was this, I don't know who said it, but if we could treat thoughts and feelings and sensations the way we treat sounds, we'll be a Zen master, my friend. Yeah, because how we deal with sounds is we are not embroidering them usually. We are not, they are not me, they come and go, I'm aware of it. Yeah. But so with this so-called external, which ultimately is not external, the sound, but because the sound appears within consciousness, but let's not go too esoteric like that. But the sound seemingly out there, we are, for the usual consciousness, the sound seems out there. So it's interesting, we don't identify with the sounds which are out there. We identify with the content which is in here, thoughts and feelings. So we already have this of not sticking to sounds. We just need to practice this, as Suzuki Roshi would say, something like, he will meditate long time and then he will say something like, it is the state of being where we don't stick to anything. This is the aim of our practice. And I don't know who said, another Zen master says, thought follows thought. You should try to not cling to any of them.
We could also, this is just an analogy that comes to mind, but that I've had before. The psychological world is not unlike the universe. There are all these objects moving and spinning and reflecting light. And if we could realize that actually our inner psychological world, in some ways you could say, is as vast as the universe. And if we could see inside our psychological world all of that space between the planets of thoughts and the galaxies of emotion and so on, if we could see all the space and just see it as a universe. And conversely, if we could look out into the universe and see it as the way we see our psychology, there's a direct parallel here. They are not different. They're the same principle, same universal principle at work. But we take the one very personally, consider it very small, with no space in between thoughts or emotions, or when in fact there are. If you take a pause between now and now, it seems like there was just a little now, but actually that little space is a deep gulf into consciousness, and can be a deep gulf into which consciousness realizes itself between thoughts. This is a non-dual idea and an Eastern idea. Try to realize yourself between the thoughts, in the empty space between. But it's more than an empty space. It is a gulf or an opening into another dimension. and awareness can just be.